here is already 100 participants. Hopefully we have more participants. I think this is a hybrid classroom, so some of them are in the classroom and some of them join directly to the Zoom. Okay, once again, thank you so much, Ibu Melani and Ibu Delita, and also English Education Study Program and American Corner and all the participants. I hope all the participants will stay on joining this don't stop or what is it? Quit. Don't quit in the middle of the webinar. And I officially open the international webinar entitled Designing Culturally Responsive Teaching Strategies in English Education Study Program and American Corner today, the 27th of April 2026 officially. May God bless all of us. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Professor Carroll, for your inspiring opening remarks and for setting the tone for today's discussions. Well, ladies and gentlemen, for your information, we would love to inform that this Zoom will be also, and it is live streamed now through some online platforms. So hopefully that you can share this good news and good discussions today, strategic discussions as it has been mentioned before by Carol Anatototi to your others faculty members maybe, so they could join also and get a new insight and expand their horizons regarding today's topic. Well, without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, I would love to call our first speakers today of today's international webinar, Dr. Melanie Gobert. Please, Dr. Melanie. Yeah. Well, ladies and gentlemen, our first speaker today is Dr. Melanie Taylor Gobert. Well, Dr. Gobert is an internationally experienced educator, researcher, and teacher training with decades of work in English language teaching and higher education across multicultural contexts. Well, recently, she is also an English language fellow of RELO, Regional English Language Office of United States Embassy in Jakarta, and now she is placed at Patimura University, Ambon, well, specifically at the English Education Study Program. And thank you, Melanie, for joining our study program. And this is the second year of her joining English Education Study Program. Well, her academic and professional expertise includes second language reading development, vocabulary acquisitions, writing, pedagogy, educational technology assessments, and teacher professional learning. Well, she has published extensively in the field of English language teaching, has served as editor of a peer-reviewed ELT journal, and continues to contribute globally through speaking engagement, publications, and her educational podcast. Maybe after this, Melanie would love to talk a bit about her educational podcast also maybe. And also, she also has teaching tips for the English language teaching, ELT. And we would love to inform that Ibu Melanie also initiated a ELTPD, English Language Teaching Professional Development in Ambon. And ladies and gentlemen, please join me in warmly welcoming Ibu Dr. Melanie Gobert. Dr. Gobert, the floor is yours.
Thank you for that introduction, Patrick. I know that my talk is going to be very long and go over time, so I'm going to move very quickly through it.
Anyway,
and
Melanie, you have an hour.
Please
You have an hour
be ready to
for
listen,
this.
okay?
Yeah. Thank you so much.
The title of my talk is actually from Ibu Osha. She asked if this would be a good theme for the seminar, and I said, actually, that's a good title for my talk. Multicultural Literature in ELT, Designing Inclusive and Culturally Responsive Reading Classrooms. So a brief introduction of myself, the order of the talk. So I'm going to introduce myself very briefly because Patrick gave me a great introduction. I'll talk about reading in L1 English and L2 English. What is language learner literature? Some of you might not be familiar with that term. Then I'm going to talk about a study I did in the UAE on enhancing national identity. I'll also mention what extensive reading is in case some of you are unfamiliar with it. At the end of the talk, we'll talk about GRAIN and ERA, and I'll reveal those acronyms to you later. And then I'll conclude with students as authors and questions and discussion. Okay, so here I am. That's the Rub Al Khali in Saudi Arabia. I spent about 30 years teaching in the United Arab Emirates and Saudi Arabia. This book is the result of a project that I did in enhancing national identity through indigenous literature. I was a journal editor for 6 years, as Patrick mentioned. I'm also a book reviewer and editor. My current book that I'm editing is the conference proceedings for the 2026 TESOL Arabia Conference. I'm also an author. And I'm also a reviewer for 3 Scopus Index journals, most recently the Australian Journal of Applied Linguistics. Okay, let's start the talk. I hope you have the chat opened. Okay, you can answer these questions in the chat. What's your favorite book? Let me see how I can access the chat and look at my slides at the same time. So anybody, you can type quickly in the chat. What's your favorite book? The Kite Runner. Good book. The Way of Happiness. Secrets of Divine Love. That sounds like something I want to read. Sherlock Holmes, The Little Prince. Okay, let us go to the next question. Okay, what are you reading at the moment? Some of you already answered that. Okay, what are some famous Indonesian books that I should read? What are some famous, okay, this looks like an Indonesian book. I can't pronounce it because everyone knows I don't speak Bahasa Indonesian. What are some other Indonesian books that I should read? We have like over 100 Indonesian people attending, so surely you must have some recommendations for a non-Indonesian. What are some good Indonesian books I should read? Broken Rings, is that Indonesian?
Open stream. Ocean breeze, Ferdinand, open stream.
Anyone else? Story of activists disappeared during the Suharto regime and the loss felt by their friends and family. I'm going to turn around so I can show you the book I'm reading now. Here we go. Can you see that? Okay. About the island of
Wow.
Kay
Okay.
during the conflict.
So,
It was originally written in Indonesian, but I'm reading the English translation. It has been translated into English. And I currently have a student from the island of Kay. So I'm going to have her tell me how realistic it is. Now, for this question, you don't have to put it in the chat, but I'll just give you a moment to think. Have you ever had a bad experience reading? And, what made it a bad experience? So I'll just give you about 1 minute to think about that. Okay, I'm sure we've all had bad experiences reading as well as good experiences. Now we're going to talk about reading in English L1, and then we're going to talk about reading in English L2. I'm sure most of you know this information already, but we do have some teachers in training. Okay. Reading in L1, the home is rich in literature. Okay. This is a picture from my own home. So you can see we like books a lot. Reading begins early. It's a shared social activity with a significant other. We even have bathtub books, books that you can take in the bathtub. That's how early we begin reading. Do you have any books you can take in the bathtub in Indonesia? We even bathtub books, books that you can take in the bathtub. That's how early. That's funny echo. Okay, kids read at school in a shared social activity. By the time children enter school, a lot of them can read already, or they like books and they're happy because their parents read to them. Okay, reading in English, we teach phonics and sight words. English has a very deep orthography compared to a language like Bahasa Indonesian, where one letter has one sound. I think it's much easier to read in languages like Bahasa Indonesian, Italian, Spanish. It's much more difficult to read in English or French. Yes? And also, when we read in English, when we begin reading, we read about people like ourselves and the story. Now, 30 years ago, 40 years ago, it used to only be, white middle class people that we read about. But of course, that has been updated. And now children can read about all different kinds of people like themselves. Yeah, these are all American stories. And as you know, we are a multicultural society. Okay, let's talk about reading in L2 English, how we teach reading to second language learners. Okay, ESL reading methodology was developed back in the early 80s, late 70s, okay? And it's mostly intensive reading versus extensive reading, which I'll talk about later. Okay, a researcher named Goodman, they invented back in the early days of computer, you can track the eye movements when people read to see where they linger over words, okay? And he found when he was studying native speaker advanced readers that their eyes would linger over certain words, circle back to other words. And he hypothesized that it was a predict what you're going to read, and confirm what you read. In L1 English, this is often called whole reading or top-down reading. Okay, now this has had a huge impact on L2 English reading. Despite the fact that this research was done on advanced native speaking readers, because I would argue that advanced native speaking readers are not the barometer by which you measure beginning ESL readers, especially if they have a different alphabet or a different reading culture, which I'll come to later when I talk about my studies. But I think we can all accept that ESL reading methodology is mostly one of intensive reading. And Alderson, of course, is famous also for his threshold hypothesis. So they noticed even back in the 80s that L2 readers struggled when learning how to read English. And his hypothesis, was it because they were weak in reading, or was it because they were weak in English? Which came first? Being weak in English, so they need to improve their English and then they'll become better readers? Or are they weak in reading because they don't know English very well? Okay, but no matter how you slice it, reading in L2 English is a methodology of intensive reading, reading short text and answer questions. So here's a more direct comparison. Okay, and you may argue that, well, in L2 reading, most of the people are already accomplished readers in their own language. So it's just a question of transferring what they know in their own language to reading in English. And this may be true in some circumstances, but in my experience, most readers of L2 are not very good readers in L1. And I'll talk about that more later when I get to a research study that I had funded in the UAE. So I think we can pretty much agree that there is a difference, right? Okay, now I'm going to talk about language learner literature. Some of you might not know what language learner literature is. Language learner literature is literature written specifically to help language learners. Now, most of the language learner literature that has been written in English, okay? Because there is a large, very large market for English language learning. But some other languages like Spanish and Dutch also have some graded readers, okay? Now, there's two kinds of these graded readers. Some are original stories, okay? So let me see if I have any original stories here. I don't think so. Help, okay? Do you see the book called Help by Philip Proust? That's an original story written for English language learners. Most of these other books, Brave New World, Christmas Carol, Tom Sawyer, most of them are adapted text. I think The Elephant Man is an original story, but it is based on a true person, okay? So nonfiction. And then we have At the Beach. This might also be an original story, okay? So we have two types of language learner literature: fiction, that's been adapted, sorry, I don't want to say fiction and nonfiction. I want to say classic English literature that's been rewritten in a simplified form for language learners. But we also have original stories written for language learners. We have fiction and nonfiction, but most of it is fiction. Okay, and for multicultural language learner literature, there are some signs of hope, okay? And this is from a study that I did about 2008. So most of these books date from that time. There seems to be a shortage of new modern stories for graded readers, but this is probably because it's like the publishers are no longer investing money into publishing new graded readers. This is probably because, they're not making money from it. Most of the publishing in the language learner literature is controlled by the big British ELT publishers like Oxford, Cambridge, Macmillan. National Geographic also has a series of nonfiction graded readers. And if you look down here in the corner, Drifting by Matthew Cotter and Identity by Matthew Cotter, those are actually from a new series produced by English language teaching publisher, English language teaching ELT publisher, let's say that, ELT publisher based in Japan. And Drifting, we actually have in the graded reader library that I have built up at Unpaddy. And Matthew Cotter is a Maori who has New Zealand nationality. He currently works in Japan. And we have the book Drifting. And Drifting is definitely placed in Asia between Japan and Malaysia, and I think one other country. Very good book. But this is all we have for new books written from Asia. And this is where the market for language learning is exploding because of countries' investment like Indonesia. But this is also happening in Thailand and Vietnam. You can see the book up here called The Best of Times by Alan Maley. That book was written in 1998. It's one of the last of a new wave. All of these books, Rabbit Proof Friends and JoJo's Story, they're already, 25 years old. Memoirs of a Geisha and Falling Leaves. These are, and you can even see Alan Maley. These books are all written by Westerners, even though they're Asian books, okay? Something to keep in mind for later. Okay, now back to my experience working in the Arab world. I had a study funded there. And so I looked at language learner literature in the Arab world, okay? But, it wasn't great because it's, literature usually written by Western people, and it stereotypes Arabs, yeah? The Curse of the Mummy, Tales of 1,001 Nights, Sinbad the Sailor, Aladdin and the Enchanted Lamp. But there were some signs of hope because in the early 2000s, The Drive to Dubai was written, and Mystery in Muscat. They were both written by a woman who worked for Oxford University Press. They were modern stories set in those countries, but again, written by a Westerner. And then they also came out with the Travels of Ibn Battuta. He is an Arabic hero who went all the way far east as China. I think he might have passed through Indonesia. And of course, Saladin is also a famous Muslim Arabic hero. Okay, so just before this talk, I did investigate language learner literature from Asia. So as I mentioned earlier, Falling Leaves, I think that's originally written by an American Chinese. Memoirs of a Geisha is a book about Japan written by a British man. 47 Ronin, a samurai story from Japan, but you can see Jennifer Bassett, written by a Westerner. Leaving No Footprints, these are stories from Asia written by Claire West, so obviously Western. And The Best of Times is the story of a Malaysian boy around this circa 2000 when Malaysia started growing and but again, it's written by Alan Maley, a famous Western ELT scholar. Okay, and I mentioned already Drifting by Matthew Cotter, the newest and a very good book. Then I have to say, Patrick and I, in our, I think we were teaching writing the short story a year ago, and we found these two books, Fire on the Mountain, Indonesian story. The students loved it. And we found Indonesian Love Story. Both are written by Paul Nation, and Paul Nation is the one who did the vocabulary word list, right? The 3,000 vocabulary word list. Sorry, I'm mistaken. The academic word list from University of Auckland. So very famous. They were, but the books were written in the early 80s, I want to say, and they're both out of print, but they are available for free online. And the students, my experience, and I think Patrick will agree, the students love these stories. They were captivated. They couldn't wait to turn the page to see what happened next. And they were also very proud. Okay, so now I'm going to take you to the study that I did in the United Arab Emirates. Okay, so I've drawn a map. I've put a picture of a map and inserted some arrows so you can see the UAE. Of course, it's in the news nowadays, so I'm sure you're all very familiar with it. We're all watching the oil prices here to see if they go up. And there I am in Ambon in the Banda Sea, okay? Now, I had a study funded called Enhancing National Identity Through Indigenous Literature in the UAE by the Emirates Foundation. I think 2009 to 2011. And the justification for the study was the degree to which language teachers can empower their students to develop and negotiate their identity will shape the future of second language acquisition research. So I'll give you the background of the study, and I want you to reflect how much is this background similar to Indonesia and how much is it different? And of course, Indonesia is a much, much larger country than the United Arab Emirates. We have over 270 million Indonesians, I think across 34 or 38 provinces. And each one almost has its own cultural identity and historical context. UAE is a very, very small country. The population of locals is probably 1 million maximum. And they're quite homogeneous society, although there are some differences, okay? So the UAE has been documented as a non-reading society. In general, they don't read. They pass on the cultural information and folklore by oral stories. It's been documented that there are very few books in the home. The first research study on that was Jazzer in 1991, an ethnographic study. At the United Arab Emirates University, which was founded in 1988, the TIMS, they joined the TIMS Testing Association. I think it stands for Trends in Mathematics and Science. They joined that international study in 2007. And that was also documented that there were very few books in the home. Now, we know from the TIMS studies that there's a direct correlation between success at school, success on the test, and the number of books you have in the home. Okay, so extensive reading is not encouraged in Arabic reading, okay? When they're taught to read in Arabic at school, extensive reading is not encouraged, okay? They're taught to read intensively. You know, read this text for the information, and then they ask a lot of detailed questions to see if the student remembers. And it's all about grades and failure and punishment. And this has been well documented by both Kandil and Mustafa. Okay, of course, Arabic is written completely differently from Bahasa Indonesian and English, right? Because they have a different alphabet, and they also have a different lexical access route because they have a different orthographic system. They have a lot of, what's it called? I want to say homonyms, I think. Same meaning. Yeah, homonyms, okay? So a lot of words are written the same, but they have different meanings. Whereas in English, we often spell words differently. We also have homonyms like bank and bank. Go to the bank, and the riverbank was lush and green. Okay, and in that context, we guess the meaning of the word. Arabic has this system, has this happen much more often, whereas we have words like sun, S-O-N, and sun, S-U-N, that sound the same, but we know immediately what's the meaning because of the difference in spelling. So Abu Rabia hypothesized that Arabic has a different lexical access route than English, okay? In English, I need to see the word to access the word. I need to see and hear the word to access the meaning. But in Arabic, I need to see the word and look at the context to access the meaning. Okay, there's also a phenomena called Arabic diglossia. I won't go into that very much, but it just means that there's no one unified Arabic language like Bahasa Indonesian. There are a lot of dialects in the Maghreb countries and the Levantine countries, and in the Gulf countries. There are 3 completely different dialects of Arabic, spoken modern Arabic, heavily influenced by their colonial or non-colonial history, I should say. And there is a standard variety of Arabic called Fusha Arabic, but that was when Arabic was modern. The classical Arabic of the Quran was modernized in the early 1900s, I believe. So already that classical Arabic Fusha is already like 100 years old, yeah, and more than 100 years old. And it doesn't allow, modern words to enter as does in spoken English, right? As in spoken Bahasa Indonesian, spoken Arabic, modern words enter all the time. Okay, and then the last piece of information for background, embracing Western beliefs has left behind many indigenous and traditional beliefs, ideals, norms, and values in many developing countries. Okay, that was Hack from 2008, and it's always a problem, right? If you're learning English, there's a lot of cultural values, as Dr. Carroll just mentioned, cultural values and stories that are inherent in the materials, and there can be a lack of representation of indigenous knowledge and traditional beliefs. And this can cause students, a feeling of discomfort. Okay, so I'm going to talk more specifically about the study. That was the background. It was an exploratory qualitative study, and we used inductive thematic analysis. 6 classes participated in the study, and we had a total of 428 discussion board postings analyzed for emerging themes, and the study lasted 1 semester. Okay, from Finlow, we know that English is associated with modernity, internationalism, business, marital status, secularism, and Arabic is associated with cultural authenticity, localism, traditions, emotions, religion. Okay, now as part of the study, we took 4 indigenous literature works, okay? One of them, you can see on the left, was written by a Westerner about his travels through the Arabian Sands from Saudi Arabia to Oman, including the United Arab Emirates. And I think he made 3 or 4 trips back after the Second World War. From Rags to Riches is written by a local. It's his I want to say autobiographical, but I think there was a ghostwriter, yeah? And then we have these 2 books, Dubai Tales and The Wink of Mona Lisa. They're collections of short stories. They have been translated from the Arabic, Mohammed Al-Mer studied at the University of Syracuse in New York. I think he studied journalism. And he wrote these stories at the beginning of his career and the beginning of the oil boom. So in the late 70s, early 80s. And these were actually translated from the Arabic to English. So we had these 4 books that we got permission to simplify the language, grade the language, so they were reproduced as a graded reader. Because a lot of times the problem with using local materials with English language learners is that the literature, like this book K that I showed you, it's been written for it's been translated for native speakers. So it's a higher level of English than our students can access. They'd have no problems if they read the book in Bahasa Indonesian. But it's not written for English language learners. It's written for people that are highly proficient in the English language. I hope that makes sense. Okay, these are the broad themes we found in the book. We found in the discussion board postings during our analysis, 38, I think. These were the major themes. We subdivided the bigger themes into, so social and moral values, environment and traditional life, cultural heritage and identity, personal qualities and character, temporality and change, and aesthetic and narrative elements. Yes? And of course, as is happening always with English language learners, there's or any human on the face of this earth, there's always a negotiation of identity between your traditional identity and what that holds and what that means, and modernity. What does it mean to have that traditional heritage in the modern world? And how do I fit into this? So these are some of the themes that the students mentioned in their discussion board postings. Okay, here are some quotes from the students. Okay, enjoyment and interest. I like this book. They talk about the life in the past. They help each other for everything and share everything, like eat, fun, and talk. In the past, the life is very simple and so funny. I like the past life because it's a very nice life. I hope to back this life. Okay? And I think this is how many times each of these things were mentioned: interest, enjoyment, exciting, and not interesting. Okay? So students enjoy reading about their local culture and local traditions in English. Another emerging thing was identification with Arab culture. You will also see how Arabs put others before themselves by asking them to give you the best thing they have, just to make sure they will. And they will because it's in their parent and their blood from their parents and their parents' parents. So Arabs are typically very generous people. And one thing they told us when we first went to work in the UAE is that we should not compliment people on on something they have, because they will give it to you even if it's valuable. So you should not say to someone, "Oh, I like your bracelet." And in English, this is common to show connection, right? Complimenting people, "Oh, I like your bracelet." But in the UAE, people would say, "Here, you have it." Okay, this is from their tradition. You can see the British man, Wilfred Thesiger, who wrote this story here in the middle. I think he died in the early 2000s. And you can see him on the picture on the right in the middle with his traveling companions. I guess that's him on the left also. Yeah. As they cross the desert. And very, very fortunately, I think, as a Westerner, I really enjoyed reading his stories of his travels through the Gulf. But I have to tell you that the students were not as enthusiastic. Remember, I showed you some of the literature written about the Arab world and the Asian world that's actually mostly been written by Westerners. In our study, we found that students, this literature written by Westerners about their world appealed less to students than their own authentic writers. Okay? I like to read stories in English about Emiratis by an Emirati writer because when I see the writer is Emirati, I feel proud. And also, I have to read in English if I want to learn the English language. Okay, and you can see these are our two Emirati authors. Muhammad al-Mir, he wrote in Arabic and his stories were translated into English, and then we simplified them into graded readers. Muhammad al-Fahim's story was written in English about his childhood and growing up in the early days of the United Arab Emirates. But again, I think it was actually, he told his story to someone, and the actual person who wrote it was a Westerner. Okay, now at the end of this study, we were actually very fortunate because Mohammed Al Fahim, who is a very rich businessman in the United Arab Emirates, he saw the value of making a student edition of his work called From Rags to Riches, A Story of Abu Dhabi. So he published it, and now most of the private schools in Abu Dhabi have this as a required reading. So this was a success. I was not the teacher who simplified the language, who graded the language and wrote the book. I was the editor for the book. The man on the right is an American who teaches in Japan, and at that time he was working in the United Arab Emirates, and he is the one who actually simplified and graded the language to make it accessible to students. Now I'm going to talk for a few minutes about extensive reading. Again, I assume all the teachers in the webinar know what extensive reading is, but I see we have some younger teachers in training, so I thought it was worth it to add this slide, okay? So what is extensive reading? A theory founded by Richard Day and Julian Bamford in actually earlier than 2002, yeah? But they wrote about the top 10 principles for teaching extensive reading, okay? And the reading material is easy. A variety of reading material on a wide range of topics must be available. Learners choose what they want to read. Learners read as much as possible. The purpose of reading is usually related to pleasure, information, and general understanding. Reading is its own reward. Reading speed is faster rather than slower. Reading is, let me see if I can, oops, sorry. I can't see what I wrote there because something is blocking me. Reading is individual and silent. Teachers orient and guide their students, and the teacher is a role model of a reader. Okay, so these are basically the 10 beliefs of extensive reading if you implement it in its purest form. Hang on a sec. Okay, so as part of this study, we also did an extensive reading pilot in the UAE. Now, this study was actually adapted across our whole system of colleges, and we had 17 campuses with about 17,000 students. But this is specifically about the pilot we did before it was adopted. Now, after we introduced it across our entire system, it was actually also picked up by Zayed University and the Petroleum Institute. So at that time, there was a great spread of extensive reading in the UAE. And if I look back and I see now how much the students' levels of English have improved. Now, it's not solely responsible for improving the levels of English because that takes, national policy decision making, but I'm sure it contributed. Now, in this pilot study, we had 179 students, we had 8 teachers, we had 3 levels, like foundation level 1, 2, and 3, and 4. We had, we gave prizes, first, second, and third in each class for who read the most. We also had the top 3 readers in each class. They were also recognized with trophies. We also had the top reader in each level, and we did a leaderboard weekly, to encourage the students to read more, and we used mReader to track the words read. Now, how our extensive reading pilot was different from the extensive reading practices in the purest form is that it says reading is its own reward. I was actually working on this project with a colleague who had worked in Turkey as the literature teacher, language arts teacher in Turkish primary schools. And she said, what if we make it a competition? And I thought, I know this will work because in the UAE, the government uses this motivation to encourage young people and nationals to participate in local traditional sports like rifle twirling and sword twirling are sports. Dhow racing is a sport, camel racing, okay? So prizes, and I don't know, I feel it's kind of the same here in Indonesia. When we do games in the class, I feel like the competitive element really motivates the students. But what happens after you've motivated the students, and this is another larger part of the study I won't talk about, it's like after a while, the students realize, hey, reading is helping my English. So you start with an extrinsic motivation that turns into intrinsic motivation. Okay, so I also did extensive reading at IFCAP. I think I'm teaching extensive reading this semester as well. I think this is my 3rd semester. But in the original extensive reading that I taught at FKIP back in 2024, we had 3 classes participating and 3 teachers, and the total number of students were 105. But in 2 classes, only 12 out of 35 students read, and in another class, only 24 out of 37. We also had a huge shortage of reading materials, so this impacted how much the students were able to read. So to set up the competition, we had a number of levels, 3 levels in 2 classes and 2 levels in 1 class. Okay, and identifying the levels when the students start reading, the mReader helps you place them if they are in level 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, I think it goes up to. So I gave prizes for the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd level in each level, in each class. I think we had 30 trophies, and everyone got a certificate. Everyone who read got a certificate, nice certificates from the RELO. And we had a weekly leaderboard. Mine wasn't as fancy as the one made in the UAE because our librarians helped us a lot, but it was enough to motivate the students, okay? And we used mReader to track the number of words read. Now, at the end of both of those, the pilot and the implementation in FKIP, I gave a little survey at the end, and you can see one of the questions was the reading challenge helped me improve. And then they have a choice of different language abilities, language skills, and they could choose more than one. So you can see vocabulary is the number 1, right? Reading, extensive reading really does improve students' vocabulary. I think they say that students need to see, or it's been researched, I shouldn't say they say, students need to see the same word in context between 12 and 17 times before they learn it. So graded readers are carefully written to repeat the same vocabulary many times. So all the students agree the number one thing that improves from extensive reading is their vocabulary. Their reading speed, of course, it also improves. The reading comprehension, 98% of the students said, my reading comprehension has improved, which, as you know, is the biggest challenge with intensive reading, right? When they take tests like the TOEFL or the IELTS, their reading comprehension is usually lacking, yeah? Grammar, look at 90% said it improved their grammar, because actually seeing the same correct grammatical patterns again and again also improves your grammar. Spelling is also something that's been documented to be improved by extensive reading. My Arabic learners were notoriously bad spellers because of all these language interference issues. But here also, I think that Indonesian learners feel also very insecure about their spelling because, you know, English is a deep orthographic language. The spelling is very tricky. But we know that seeing the word again and again helps you memorize the spelling. You cannot sound out words in English like you can sound them out in Bahasa Indonesian. It only works for a little bit in English to sound out the words. Okay, writing also, 76% said their writing had improved. Now, in the study that we did in the UAE, we did not ask about speaking or pronunciation or general English, okay? But I added those because we also did focus groups with the students in the original study in the UAE. And several of the students mentioned that their speaking had improved. And I was puzzled, but I asked for explanation. And the students, you know, told some stories about, well, I was in the mall and a man asked me for directions. So I remembered how to give him directions from my reading. Okay, and pronunciation as well had improved here. As you know, our students feel very insecure about their English pronunciation. Okay, and I had an open-ended question on both of them. What was your favorite part of using mReader? Both of the surveys I gave at the end had this open-ended question. In the UAE, same result. And here we go. 26 out of 38 responses said taking the mReader quizzes to get points and win the competition. So what I understand from that is that Indonesian students are also motivated by competition. And I've seen it myself. Our FKIP department has run spelling competitions, and I participated in a citywide spelling competition run by the IACN at the end of last semester. My favorite part of using mReader was taking the quizzes after finishing a book. It helped me to check my understanding of the story and made reading more exciting because I had a goal to reach. I also liked how I could see my progress, such as the number of words I read. It motivated me to read more. So very similar, very in sync to our study in the UAE. The award ceremony, this is also, you know, my co-researcher who was like, we need to have an award ceremony. Don't forget, she comes from a K-12 background. And I think up here in the left, those are my students holding their certificates. And the top 3 readers are there on the left. Down below, you see a male adult student. I think he worked for a big oil company. He was very proud. And look, the trophy is not very big. Over here on the right is the award ceremony at FKIP. So you can see I gave many trophies and the students were very happy to receive their trophy and their certificate. And what really touched me at FKIP because the students don't know the last 2 weeks, I don't release a leaderboard anymore. So they can read and read and read and try to win without knowing how close they are. What I saw at FKIP when I gave out the awards was the students all clapped very loudly for whoever won first, second, or third. And I was touched by this because it shows the camaraderie, the collective spirit, and the joy in others' success. So I was very, very impressed by that. Okay, now, how did we know when we were successful after 2 or 3 semesters in UAE of our reading challenge and having winners? This is the time that Instagram was invented, so I don't remember exactly when that was. But then we saw, because we were, and I think this is actually from my colleague, she was friends with some of the students on Instagram, or they followed each other. And the students actually took pictures of their awards and prizes and they put them on their social media Instagram accounts. So if you look at the picture on the left, you can see this is his car. This is probably the most prized possession of Emirati students. And they drive very, very, very nice cars like Lamborghinis, yeah? And then you can see over here on the right, he took a picture of his medal, his trophy, and his certificate. And in the middle, someone is holding up his trophy high. He posted this on social media, and it says in Arabic, but someone told me this, I don't read or write Arabic, that it says, I won for being the most handsome student in the class. Now, here we are at FKIP, okay? After our awards ceremony, the students also shared that they were the winners, their certificates, and the pictures. So I think as a teacher, you know you have succeeded when your students are sharing on social media. Okay, now let's talk about ERA and GRAIN. Okay, so, sorry. ERA stands for the Indonesian Extensive Reading Foundation, and GRAIN stands for the Graded Reader Authors in Indonesian Network, okay? There's a site for the Graded Reader Authors in Indonesian Network, and of course, I will be happy to share the slides after or share the site. And both of these have been founded by 2 teachers, I think, over in Java, Francisca Maria Ivoni at the Universitas Negeri Malang, and Fenty Lydia Siragar. Sorry if my pronunciation of Indonesian names is so bad. My students always have a big laugh about that. Maranthana Christian University, okay? They founded these 2 organizations. Indonesian Extensive Reading Foundation was founded probably 2 or 3 years ago to encourage extensive reading in Indonesia. But as you know, there is a shortage of materials. There's a shortage of culturally relevant materials, but also a shortage of materials in general because they're very expensive. And ELT publishers are not even producing new graded readers, okay? Moving more towards e-platforms, but these are subscription-based and, cost money. I was lucky to get the books that I did with the support of the Relo. We got them from a bookstore in Thailand, and they were shipped to the U.S. Embassy in Jakarta, and then they were shipped to Universitas Patimura, the FKIP department, where they will reside in the capable hands of Ibu Osha for the future. Okay, so some of you may know, maybe I don't know, Patrick and I attended a GRAIN workshop. GRAIN is Graded Reader Authors, an Indonesian network at Teflon. I was able to secure funding for Patrick to attend from the Relo. And I have to say this, I'm a technician. I can take something that's already been written and I can simplify it and grade it. I can edit, but I am not creative. I do not have an imagination. However, my colleague Patrick, he has a great imagination and he's incredibly creative. I didn't want to learn this for me. I wanted to be able to save the knowledge for Indonesia, but I also particularly wanted to save the knowledge for Maluku, right? Ivoni, Fenty, they're both based in Java. A lot of literature is coming out of there, but what about Maluku? I'm always a rooter for the underdog. Okay, this workshop was given by Rob Waring, now based in Bangkok, but he taught for many years at Notre Dame University in Japan, very involved in the Extensive Reading Foundation. And he is a graded reader, author, and editor. He does I can't remember the name of that series. He does the Nat Geo, the Cengage graded reader library, which is nonfiction. And Michael Freeman is a graded reader author based in the UK. Okay, now I'm just about winding down. Now I'm going to talk about student writing of graded readers at IFCAP. So even though Patrick and I attended this workshop, I think it was like for 3 days, Patrick, was it 3 days, 2 days? A lot of information, okay? But the workshop was made for ELT teachers to do the writing and the simplification, because typically that's what would have happened, right? Alan Maley, very famous scholar, writing graded readers. Rob Waring, writing graded readers. And of course, if these were published by one of the major ELT publishers in the UK, this would be, income for the teachers who wrote them. But when we got back to Ambon, Patrick and I teach a class together called Creative Writing in English Language Education, the short story. So I said to Patrick, why don't we have the students write the stories? So students write the graded readers. We teach them how to use AI and other internet tools, to get the correct CEFR level. Our students, mine and Patrick's students, last semester produced 23 graded readers. We allowed them to write in pairs because, many hands make light work. And they could choose traditional or modern stories from Maluku, based in the Maluku province. And in addition, we have 21 stories. You can compare the 23 stories written by our students to the ones that have been produced by GRAIN so far. 21 stories have been written by one teacher, 2 by another, and then 2 other people, I think Rob Waring is one of them, have written a story as well. So if you actually put this into the hands of students, and of course our students are not beginner students, our students are English language teachers in training, yeah? So you can see how much more can be produced by students. And for me, I could see how much more creative the students are. So this is one of Fenty's stories, okay? And, you can use AI to do the illustrations. When I did the stories in the United Arab Emirates, we had to pay someone to do the artwork and illustrations, but now AI can do that for you. Isn't that great? I did the editing. I was not paid for it. But imagine if we'd had to find someone and pay someone to do the editing for the stories. Now AI can help you with that. And this is what Patrick and I learned when we were there. Okay, some examples of our students' stories. So you probably know these stories. I don't know how to say these words. I don't want to be embarrassed. How do you pronounce it, Patrick?
Well, it's Tangkuban Perahu Mountain.
Tangkuban Pero Mountain.
Perahu.
Okay, I'm sure you know that. Don't correct me. I'm too old. I'm leaving soon. Okay, but I'm so proud of our students' work. And here's another story. I think Justina is in the webinar with us. The Legend of Nenek Luhu. Is that correct, Patrick?
Definitely 100% correct. On point.
Okay, you can see her writing. A long time ago on Saram Island, there was a small village near the Blue Sea and Green Hills. Okay, just a couple more student stories. Okay, this was one of my favorites. Haianuweli, origin of the coconut.
Hainuwele.
How do you say it?
Hainuwele.
Haianuweli, origin of the coconut goddess. But I think I have her previous version. I think Patrick made them change. Are these the illustrations you let them keep in the end, or you made them change it to make it more Moluccan?
Changing.
Yeah,
I asked them
I
to
like
change.
these. I liked these, but Patrick made them change the images to make it more Moluccan, and they did. This is the first version. Another one, The Vanishing Princess of Saram.
That's the
You
same,
can
the
see,
legend.
yeah, still some problems, with the AI illustration. This is
Yeah.
because of Western bias, yeah? Western bias in AI. And I have finished my talk. I think maybe the next person is going to speak, and then we will save questions for the end. Over to you, Patrick.
Are you finished, Ibu?
Yes?
Yeah. Or do you want to explain the pictures a bit, maybe for the audience, for the participants?
What pictures?
You and your granddaughters. They're
Oh,
on the
no, that's
chat.
okay.
Okay, good then.
I don't know how long I've been talking. I think almost an hour.
Yeah, almost an hour. We would love to give you an hour to explain, to give your presentations, and it's an hour already. And thank you so much for your presentations. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that's all from Ibu Melanie. Ibu Melanie, thank you very much. I would love to call you on these special occasions, Dr. Gobert. Thank you so much, Dr. Gobert, for such an insightful and thought-provoking presentation. Well, your perspectives have provided us with very important ideas to reflect on our own teaching context, including the classroom designs and how we use the literature as approach to help our students improving their English, reading developments, and many more. Ladies and gentlemen, I truly believe that you all have a lot of questions. I know that. Oh, that's Ibu Melanie. I thought the participants. Well, I would love to keep the Q&A sessions. I know that you must have a lot of questions in your mind, and maybe there are a lot of things to share with Ibu Melanie, but then I would
Oh,
love to.
Patrick, I forgot. I forgot one thing.
Yes,
You
please.
told me to give a little quiz at the end to see if people were listening. Should I put the link? It's very quick.
Okay then. Yes, please, Ibu Melanie, ladies. Well, the honorable distinguished participants and guests, Ibu Melanie
It will
has
be very quick, like it takes 1 minute.
a very short quiz. So you can go to the chat box, click the link, copy the links to your browser, and then we have a short, very short quiz to check your understanding regarding the presentations, please. I'm doing the quiz also now. How's the quiz, Ibu? How's the quiz, ladies and gentlemen? Okay then. Um, Ibu Melanie?
Yes, let's move on.
Okay, good then. Thank you so much. Um, Well, we would love to move to the next sessions. Maybe for the result of the test, we can discuss after Ibu delete the sessions in the Q&A sessions. Well, I would love to keep the Q&A session to the end, to the end of the Ibu Delita's presentations. So after Ibu Delita's presentations, we can open the floor for the Q&A sessions. Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much, Ibu Melanie. Applause, please, for Ibu Melanie, for Dr. Gobert. Thank you for the thought-provoking presentations. That's outstanding. Yeah, Ibu Melanie is I am Ibu Melanie's counterpart. Pardon me. Well, thank you. And our next speakers, ladies and gentlemen, for these sessions will be Dr. Delita Sartika. And how do you want me to address you, ma'am?
Pardon me?
How do you want me to address you, Dr. Delita?
Oh, Delita is fine.
Okay. Dr. Delita, then it's fine also for me. Thank you so much. Just to show how respect I am. Okay. Well, ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Delita Sartika she currently serves as a lecturer in the English Language Education Study Program at the Faculty of Teacher Training and Educations, Jambi University, and also holds the positions of Vice Dean for Academic Affairs. Wow, incredible. Academic Affairs, Corporations and Information Systems within the same faculty also. And she earned her bachelor's degree in English literature from Andalus University. Following that, her master's degree in translations and interpreting studies from Monash University, Australia, and her PhD in literary and cultural studies, also from Monash University. Well, her research spans across multicultural and inclusive educations. Wow, that's incredible. Curriculum development, gender responsive educations, academic writing, creative writing, and translation studies. She also widely recognized for her contributions as a columnist, researcher, curriculum developer, and invited speakers at national and international academic forums. Today, she will share valuable perspectives that connect cultural responsiveness with educational practice in Indonesian and global context. Well, please join me in warmly welcoming Dr. Delita Sartika. Dr. Delita, the floor is yours, please.
Right. Thank you very much, Bapak Patrick. Before we begin, I'll try to get my slides on the screen first. Okay. Can you see my slide?
Yeah,
Yes.
Okay, great.
it's nice and
Um,
clear anyway.
All right, let's start. Good morning, everyone. I'm very happy to come back to FKIP Universitas Patimura. Thank you for having me, Bapak Wakil Dekan 1, Prof. Carol, and also the program coordinator, Ibu Rosina. It's a real pleasure to be speaking with our future English teachers at Universitas Patimura. I've been looking forward to this conversation. I'd like to welcome everyone in my session. I hope you're still with us, not really tired yet because online Zoom meeting can be very exhausting. You can bring your coffee and snacks to the table and then get to enjoy what we'll be talking about in the next 45 minutes. So in my session, we will be talking about culturally responsive teaching, in particular in an age like today, where acceptable English isn't singular, but many. So Ibu Melanie just now has showed us in the earlier session a real gap between at the materials level. So finding texts that are about local life, local culture, and written by local voices. So what I want to talk about today sits right next to hers. The same gap, but in how we teach. Materials and teaching are two halves of the same question. So the culturally responsive teaching, or CRT, that we are conversing today will not be a framework to download. I'm not going to give you a model to memorize or a checklist to apply. But what this workshop is, it is a chance to think together about 4 questions that I believe every future English teacher and the current teachers in Indonesia needs to answer. Not a final answer, but a working one. So that the kind of answers that guides how a future English teachers walks into his or her first classroom later. So in this workshop, I want you to imagine being an English teacher one day, teaching in an English class maybe in 2030. So for those who think teaching English is not their dream, because I believe some have aspiration to need to enter other profession, I hope some takeaways from this workshop will be helpful for you as English learners and English speakers engaging in English conversation in the future. So before we begin, I want you to do something quietly, just for yourself. You do not need to share it in the chat or typing anything. So you ready? So let's think of a moment, maybe back in your school days or here at university, when you had something to say in English class, but you decided at the end not to say it. So maybe in a class discussion or a presentation or a group project, or simply a moment when the teacher asked a question and you knew the answer but did not raise your hand. So I believe many of us experience one of those moments. Now let's ask ourselves, what stopped us from speaking? Some of you are thinking, probably, maybe it's because my English wasn't good enough. Some others may think, I'm scared I will sound stupid. Or some are thinking, I wasn't sure if it was my place to speak. So all of these feelings are real. Almost every student I've ever taught has at least one of those moments. I have them too myself. So hold on to that memory. We will come back to it at the very end of my session. And I'm going to ask you to look at it again with fresh eyes. Now, let's begin talking about culturally responsive teaching. So let me start by naming what you might expect from a workshop with this particular title. So when people hear culturally responsive teaching, many will expect things like how to use local folk tales or local food as reading text in reading lessons, or ask students to make conversation about traditional musical instrument, tifa, for example, or traditional housing or traditional festivals in speaking lessons. So I want to say something clearly on this. None of that is wrong. It's genuinely fabulous. So bringing local cultures into our classroom is much better than reading a text about Candi Borobudur, for example, that no one in our class has ever visited. So when students can see their own world, their own life reflected in the language they're learning, something will shift. And that matters a lot in their during their learning journey. So what I want to over today is that the materials layer, like integrating a text about how to make papeda into reading lesson, is one part of culturally responsive teaching. It is an important part, but it's also the most visible part. And when we only work at that layer, we miss most of what's actually happening in our classroom. So culture is much bigger than materials. It's also much more subtle than materials. So, and once we learn to see it beyond materials, we will become a much more adaptive teacher, the one who can be culturally responsive in any school with any students, even when the textbook hasn't caught up yet. So that's the project for today. We're going to widen the frame. So here's the structure. There are 4 questions. We will spend roughly equal time on each of these questions. So the first question, what does culturally responsive teaching actually look like in practice? And what does its absence looks like? So the second question, why does this matter now, today, more than it did 30 years ago? So what actually changed in the field of English language teaching and learning? And the third question, whose culture are we even teaching in our English classroom? So once we widen the frame, we will see, are we still being relevant with how the students use the language? And what's still worth keeping from the older tradition of teaching English to the native speaker standards? And the fourth question, why are Indonesian classrooms still so silent? And what's our part as teachers, future teachers, pre-service teacher in either fixing that or making it worse? So those are the 4 important questions that we will address during this session. Let's dig in. So we will be talking first about what CRT is and is not. So I want you to picture to English classroom. Both teachers are good teachers in these 2 classrooms. In classroom A, the teacher opens the textbook to a lesson, let's say a text called Jenny's House in London. She also plays the audio CD and has students repeat. She corrects pronunciation carefully every time it drifts from what's on the recording. She asks a question and calls on the maybe 2 or 3 students who always raise their hands. So she reads a passage about Christmas dinner, and for the homework, she assigns the student to have a writing text or write something about describing their holiday. So in classroom B, the teacher used the same Jenny's house text, but she pauses and asks the class, whose house look like this? Whose house doesn't look like this? So she still teaches pronunciation, but she can differentiate between errors that break meaning and accent features that do not. She notices that 3 students haven't spoken for like 1 week or 2 weeks, and she facilitates a safer entry for them, maybe by making them write first and then doing a pair share and then share with the whole class. So she inspired students to bring in their own celebration, any celebration at home. So instead of telling students to describe your holiday, she gave a writing prompt that says, describe a time you celebrate something at home. So now let's take a look at these 2 classrooms side by side. The materials are almost identical. The textbook is the same. The grammar point is the same. The teacher in classroom A is not unkind. She is not incompetent. In many ways, she's actually doing exactly what she was trained to do during the university in FKIP, just like you. So the difference between these 2 classrooms is not in the materials. It's in the recognizing. It's in the noticing the student. It's in the noticing who's in the room. So a classroom B's teacher is noticing things. She's noticing whose life is similar to the reading text and who's not. She's noticing which student hasn't spoken. She's noticing the difference between a pronunciation error that matter and need fixing and one that doesn't. So that noticing is the heart of culturally responsive teaching. So that is our focus today. Now let's see what actually irresponsive teaching looking like. So here's the uncomfortable truth. Culturally irresponsive teaching usually doesn't look like a bad teaching. It looks like teaching that has never been questioned. So we can see that there are 3 patterns at least that look neutral but aren't, that we face every day in our English classes. So the first one is treating standard American or British English as the only correct variety of English. It sounds like just teaching properly because that is our first instinct. But what it actually does is tell every student whose English sounds Indonesian or even Japanese or Ambonese that their English is a problem, that their English is broken English. The second one is assuming that all students in our class share the same religious, family, social, or economic background. So assuming all of them have experience going on a holiday with their family, including in that example. So when a reading passage talks about, for example, dinner with mom and dad, we dismiss students in the room who may not live with both of those people. So when a lesson assumes everyone celebrates a particular holiday, some students will quietly choose not to speak because they don't have a story to share. So these are small moments, but they discourage some students who feel they can't relate with the lesson. And the third one is, this is the problem that is very common in our class. The assumption that silence in class means students do not know the answer. Sometimes it does, but more often, silence means students don't feel safe to be wrong. So those are 2 completely different diagnoses. They need completely different responses in teaching. So when I say culturally responsive teaching is about noticing, this is what I mean. It's noticing these subtle patterns that most of our own teachers never notice because nobody taught them how to notice them. So let's move to the next slide. Let me give you a one sentence definition. You won't find it in any books in this exact form. I'm offering it because I think it's most useful that you can work out with today. So culturally responsive teaching is teaching that notices who is in the room, all of who they are. So, and refuses to pretend they are not there. So notice what this definition does not say. It doesn't say teaching with local materials. It doesn't say teaching about culture. It says noticing who's in the room. So the students in your future classrooms, or maybe in 5 or 10 years from now, are already culturally complex before you open your mouth. A teacher's job is not to add culture to the classroom. Their job is to notice and respect what's existing. So everything I've just described, noticing who is in the room, seeing the whole student, refusing to pretend difference is not there, that's not specific to English teaching. A good math teacher will do this. A good history teacher will do this. Any good teacher in any subject will do this. But here's why it matters extra for a language teacher like us. The sensitivity we practice toward our student in our classroom is also the sensitivity we are teaching them to practice toward the world. So because when our students grow up and use English, they won't be using it with one kind of person. They'll be using it with a range of people from different backgrounds, different accents, different Englishes, different ways of meaning things. The habit of noticing and adjusting that we are modeling in our classroom is the same habit they'll need out there when they're engaging in English-speaking situations. So this means, and this is the most important part, rigidly measuring English against one norm doesn't serve them. It doesn't match the world they will encounter later. Okay, I hope that is not too fast. Let's go to the next slide. So now I think you might be thinking, this is like a nice concept, but why do we urgently need this awareness today? Awareness of noticing whose culture is in the room. So two big things have changed a lot this past 30 years. English has changed and our students have changed too. Do we know that roughly 4 out of 5 English conversation in the world today do not involve a native English speaker? So 4 out of 5. The majority of English being spoken on this planet right now is being spoken between non-native speakers, between people who learn it as second, third, or fourth language. So maybe a Korean teacher talking to a Brazilian researcher in a conference in Tokyo, or an Indonesian teacher writing an email to a Vietnamese collaborator, or an Indian engineer explaining a project to a Malaysian client using English. So if the majority of English conversations taking place between non-native, it's only logical that we need to audit how we teach and how we learn English today. So it means that the English your future students, our future students will actually use in their life is not the English of London or Boston. It's the English of the room they happen to walk in, which will usually be a room full of other non-native speakers figuring out how to understand each other. So researchers have been talking about what English is. The idea is from Kachru that English has broken into many legitimate local varieties: Indian English, Singaporean English, Nigerian English, Indonesian English. We have Japanese English even, if you notice how President Jokowi spoke. So these are not broken version of the real English. They are real Englishes with their own patterns used by millions of people every day. So with so many acceptable versions of English around us and our students, it is only logical that English classes integrate cultural responsiveness as a skill to be built in every English learners. So when we are teaching our students, we have to ask ourselves, are we preparing them for the English of 1970 or the English of 2026 or even 2035, for example. So this is where we need to filter out what actually needs more attention. Do we really still need to strictly monitor our students' accent, pronunciation, grammar, and correct every errors? Or do we need to be more sensitive in our feedback, identifying exactly when those features actually break the conversation and encourage our students to use practical expressions such as apologizing, clarifying? We will talk about this more later to navigate any conversational issues they're having in real time. So let's go to the third question now. Whose culture are we teaching? If we are widening what culture means, so whose culture are we actually teaching in our classroom? That's a big question. So here is the definition from Ellen Spencer OT. She is an intercultural communication researcher. She defines culture as I'm paraphrasing hers, a fuzzy set of attitudes, beliefs, behavioral norms, and values shaped by a group of people. So notice what she does not say. She does not say a nation. She says a group of people. And a group of people can be many things. It can be a nation. That's the default definition. But it can also be a generation. The way Gen Z talks is not how millennials talk. It can be a gender. It can be a profession. Doctors communicate differently from lawyers, maybe, who communicate differently from teachers. So it can also be a religion. It can be a region. The culture of Ambon is not the culture of Jambi. It's not the culture of Jakarta. It can be a social class. So here's what this means for the future English classroom or any classroom. Our classroom is not one culture meeting another culture. Our classroom is 15 cultures already overlapping in one room. And we, the teacher, are one of them. So the student who sits in the front row is shaped by her generation, her family's religion, her neighborhood, her gender, her phone. And the student in the back row is shaped by a different combination of all of those things. So they are both Indonesian, they are both our students, and they are not the same culture. So this is what I mean when I say culture is subtle, very subtle. We don't have to go to London to experience cross-cultural exchange. We do it every day, every single day, in every classroom, in every interaction. So the question is whether we are doing it with awareness, with noticing, or doing it blind. This widening definition of culture is the tool we can use to audit our English learning. So the older tradition of teaching English, the tradition that held up native speaker standard, that taught us perhaps Jane Austen or Shakespeare, that real pronunciation and grammar, that tradition give us something worth keeping. We cannot just throw them away. We ask questions to test them. Do they still serve students who will speak with a range of people? Or do they only serve students trying to imitate one kind of speaker? So by that test, here are some of the things that still worth keeping. The first one, clarity matters forever. Students still need to be understood when they speak. So this requires good pronunciation and grammar. Yes, and we need to be disciplined about teaching grammar. Students learn the convention first before they can wisely break them when the situation requires. So what they don't need is hyper-focus and hyper-correction on pronunciation and grammar that prevents them from speaking fluently. And the second one, this one, students need to students need to be exposed to a wide range of registers: academic English, literary English, casual English, professional English. That tradition gave students access to range. So range is exactly what serves students who will encounter many different speakers in many different conversational settings. So we keep it. English class today is not preparing students for one fixed kind of English encounter. It's prepare them for many. And the registered students' need are not just academic versus casual. They're shifting all the time depending on who's in the room with them. So let me show you what I mean with a real situation that could happen in Ambon next month or next week. Imagine our student now, you as a student in the university, is asked by your lecturer to host two visitors. The first one is a C teacher student from the Philippines, for example. Same age as you, also a non-native English speaker in town for a couple of weeks for a teaching exchange. And the second one is a senior researcher, let's say from Korea, visiting the campus for an academic seminar. So same student, given different people to accompany. So same level of English to completely different ways of speaking. With the Filipino student, you might be mixing English and Indonesian and joke around and drop in like the word rumah makan here, right? Without translating. And then you talk about food. Casual register two peers using English as a shade tool. So with the Korean researcher, the same student, you will slow down, choose your word carefully, use more formal English, leave more space in the conversation. So professional register, a young Indonesian welcoming a senior visitor. So notice neither version is better English here. Both are exactly the right English for who is in the room. So that ability to read the room and shift our register is what we mean by culturally responsive use of language. That skill needs to be taught to our student. It's indeed something that we can actually teach to the student. So we can build practice for it. We can stop pretending that one kind of English is the goal and start helping students find the right English, the right confidence for the situation they're actually in. I hope this example represents what I want you to see. So let's see the next slide. This is the last section, and this is the one that I care about most after like 20 years teaching English, so stay with me. I also believe that most of you notice this in your own classroom. So there's a pattern that every English teacher in Indonesia has seen, every English lecturer in Indonesia has seen, which was produced by years of hyper-focus and hyper-correction of pronunciation and grammar, and obsession over clean, standardized English, native-oriented English. So I've seen it, you have seen it, you probably been in some of the situation. So a student who knows the answer, who can construct the sentence, who has the vocabulary with them, but also the one who choose not to speak when the opportunity arrives. So we've been talking about this problem for decades in Indonesian English teaching. It's not new, it's not mysterious, and somehow it hasn't gone away. It's still there being our problem every day in our class. So let me ask you this. In your English classes, maybe you can recall in one of those classes back in your school days, what percentage of students spoke regularly in class? My best guess, it was not half, reaching half of the class. So most of the class or half of the class is quiet. Most of the time, even when they know the answer, even when they have the right vocabulary to express what they want to express. So why? That is the question. So I want to argue that the answer may not be cultural shyness. It's not about Indonesian students being naturally quiet. So these same students may talk for 3 hours on WhatsApp group about the things they actually care about. So the answer is in how they were taught when they're learning English. Let me show this through the 4 skills that we've been teaching in our classroom. I'm going to tell you 4 stories, one for each of the 4 classic language skills: listening, speaking, reading, writing. And you can watch for the pattern that come up in every skill. So in listening, a student joins let's say, a regional youth conference on Zoom. The speakers are Filipino, Indian, Malaysian, Vietnamese. She understands almost none of them because her ear was trained on BBC audio clips in the language laboratory every time. Now she is in a real listening situation, and she found that she was not ready for that kind of conversation. So she feels that her listening skill is very bad. In speaking skill, a student has a brilliant point to make in class. He rehearses it in his head once, twice, over and over to make sure that grammar is perfect, singular, plural, third person, tenses agreeing, all checked. By the time he is ready to speak, the topic has moved on. He stays silent. His training taught him to optimize for correctness. The conversation then move on without him. In the reading lesson, a student reads a Reddit thread, a WhatsApp forward, and an AI-generated summary, all in the same afternoon, all in English. But she has no framework for evaluating any of them. In school, she learned to read Pride and Prejudice, for example, which is beautiful, but it's not the reading job she's actually doing. In writing session, writing lesson, a student writes a full essay in English. She thinks about it carefully. She turns it in. The teacher returns it with correction on every missing articles, every minor propositions, every grammatical incorrectness. The students read the corrections and decide that she's bad in English and stops writing. So what got corrected wasn't her English. It was her willingness to write in English. So 4 different stories. What's the pattern? In every one, there's this old mindset treating English as a performance to be judged. And in the actual world, these students are entering English as is a tool for reaching people, for actually conversing and exchanging meaning with someone. So these are 2 different jobs, 2 different things of using English. They need different teaching. When we train students for performance, we produce students who go silent under pressure because performance has risk, performance has stakes. Actually conversing with someone is lower stakes and more human, where mistakes, errors are normalized, forgiven, and mended in real time. So here's what we haven't been teaching our students much. And this is the most practical thing I can give you today. We haven't been teaching them that communication breakdown is normal, that it's part of how speaking works, especially in a second language, that when something goes wrong in a conversation, it's fixable. We've taught them the opposite, that getting wrong is a failure. So when they feel a mistake coming, they go silent because silence will feel safer than being wrong. And they overthink when they speak. In a real language event, where 2 people are trying to understand each other, overthinking just makes us slower than the conversation. So when he finally decide to talk, the topic has moved on. That's backwards, and it's teachable with 4 very simple moves. So you can write this down, or I can hand the slides for you later. You can use them yourself or teach them to your future students one day. So first one, apologize when something comes out wrong. Not a big apology, just saying like, sorry, let me say that again. That's it. You can try again. Most English learners don't realize this. This looks simple, but most of English learners don't have the skill to apply this. Second one, clarify when we don't understand someone. So we can say something like, could you say that another way? I'm not sure I follow, or can you give an example? These are not signs of weaknesses. They are the behavior of a skilled communicator. In a world where 4 out of 5 English conversations happen between non-native speakers, asking for clarification is not a backup plan. It's the normal move. in conversation. It should be the norm that we teach our students. The third one, negotiate, meaning when things are unclear. Do you mean X or Y? I'm hearing this. Is that what you mean? We're not supposed to understand everything on the first pass. Nobody does. So negotiation is normal. Language events are where people learn from each other, not where one person tests the other. The fourth move is confirm when we want to be sure. So what you're saying is like this, or let me make sure I've got this right, and then you confirm. This is what professionals do in meeting in every language, everywhere. Apologize, clarify, negotiate, confirm. These four moves erase most of the fear of speaking because they tell the student we don't have to get it right in the first time. We can recover. In every social and cultural situation, conversation is a cooperation. So not a test of performance. These moves do not signal that our English has failed. They are what every confident, thoughtful speaker of any language does all the time. This move mean we have sensitivity about the people we're speaking with. When we ask for clarification, we are being culturally sensitive. When we negotiate meaning, instead of assuming or pretending we understood, we are being culturally sensitive. So in this part that matter most for you as future teacher, these are not just strategies that you can teach your student. These are strategies for you too. A teacher who apologizes when she misspeaks, who asks for clarification when she doesn't understand a student's question, who negotiates meaning rather than just correcting the students, that teacher is the curriculum. Your behavior teaches your students what's allowed in the room. So if your student learn nothing else from you, teach them this, that communication disasters are always fixable. Apologize, clarify, negotiate, confirm, and keep going. That's what the actual conversation situation will look like out there. I think we're almost at the end. I'm not going to ask you to do an activity right now. What I want instead is for you to take this with you. So most of you, the students of English education program in FKIP Unpati, most of you will do your PLP or teaching practicum this semester or next semester. You will sit in real classrooms. You will watch real teachers. Before you start teaching yourself, you have this precious window of being an observer during your PLP. So use it not as an assignment that I gave you, as field notes for the teacher you're about to become. So when you're sitting in that classroom during your teaching practicum, you can notice these things. First, about the teacher. Who does the teacher call on? Who never gets called on? When a student speaks with non-standard accent or phrasing, what does the teacher do? Correcting it, ignoring it, or building on it? So when does the teacher wait in silence, and when does she feel the silence? About the materials, you can observe whose life does the textbook represent. Can the students see themselves in the lesson, in the text, which students cannot see themselves in the text? About the room that you are in your one of your teaching practicum later. Who speaks? Who is quiet? Is the quietness the same across lesson, or does it change with the activity, the topic, the teacher's mood? And about yourself, that you can observe during that teaching practicum time, what did this teacher do to that you want to steal from for your own teaching? So what did she do that you want to do differently when you are in your own classroom teaching the student? So in your PLP, in your teaching practicum, notice this pattern. You don't need to report any of this to your supervisor or write it out. You can keep it for yourself. It will be the most important reading you will do this year. not from textbook, but from a real experience in the classroom. Okay, before we close, let me pull all things together. There are 5 things, the bones of the whole session. The first one is culturally responsive teaching is different noticing, not different content, not the different material. We can teach with the colonial era textbook and still be culturally responsive if we notice that the book assumes and helps students notice with you. Second one, English has changed. Our students have changed. Our teaching can change with them too. It does not have to keep running on the 1970s concept. The third one, we are not rejecting the tradition of 1970s English teaching. We are inheriting it, but critically. So take what serves the students who will speak with a range of people and leave out what doesn't. The fourth one, the 4 skills are not what they used to be. Speaking especially has shifted from performance to negotiation. Teach it as negotiation. And the last one, this is the most important one. Communication disasters are always fixable. So teach this to our students, use this ourselves. That repair strategies can be very useful in any conversation. You can apologize, you can clarify, you can negotiate, you can confirm, but you have to keep going in conversation. So before I end this session, I want to ask you to do one more quiet thing. Remember the moment in the earlier session that I asked you to think at the very beginning. The moment in your back in your school days, maybe the moment you held back in class, the moment you knew the answer but don't say anything. Pull that memory back up, look at it again with what you know now. What was it really about? Was it really about your English? Or was it about a classroom culture that taught you that getting it wrong was worse than staying quiet? So you don't have to tell me now. I think you can keep it. You can reflect on it later. Your future student in a few months, in a year, in 5 years, will have their own version of that moment. They will sit in your classroom knowing the answer, and they will not speak. You will not be able to force them to speak, but you can build a classroom where the silence is not about fear, because you have taught them through how you teach that being wrong is just a step in communicating. So that is the work. That is what culturally responsive teaching actually is. It's not a method. It's a way of being in the room with the students we are given. So I think your future students will have better opportunities in being a good conversion, a good English speakers in the future by preparing them for different kinds of language situations. And it doesn't have to involve fear at all. I think that is the end of my presentation. Here are some readings if you want to read more later. Thank you for your attention. Thank you for FKIP Unpati for having me. And thank you all of you for being the kind of students or teacher who show up to this kind of workshop. I think you are going to be good teachers. The fact that you're here already tells me that. Good luck with your PLP, all the students attending this seminar. Good luck with your future classrooms. Thank you very much. Over to Bapak Patrick. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Well, thank you very much, Ibu Dr. Delita, for your rich and very insightful presentation this morning. It reminds us a lot of how we're supposed to manage our class and how culturally responsive teaching is not merely a framework but a commitment in which that the upcoming students, the education's paradigm might be changed a lot. That the students isn't only different in case of cultural, but they have been raised in a different domestic background also, and it's a meaningful learning that we're supposed to really take care of. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we have now. Well, I forgot one thing. Where is the applause for Ibu Dr. Delita, please? Where is the applause? No applause, please. Yeah, thank you, thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Well, now we are coming to, no, not the end, by the way, but we have now arrived at the discussion sessions. I would love to say that this is not a Q&A sessions. Instead of the Q&A sessions, maybe discussion sessions, so we can talk more a bit about maybe some participants would love to share their insights, their ideas regarding the same topic also. Well, both presentations have given us a valuable perspectives, and from international perspectives, yes, definitely. To Indonesian's educational realities, definitely. And I believe many of us have questions and reflections right after listening to these two incredible presenters, speakers' presentations. Well, then participants, you are very welcome to submit questions through the Zoom chat box, or you are allowed to raise your hand feature if you would love to ask directly to both of these lovely presenters, speakers this afternoon in the Eastern Indonesian time. Well, as we wait for the questions, maybe I would love to begin with one questions for both speakers. Yes. What is one practical, culturally responsive teaching strategy that educators can immediately implement in their classroom, even with limited resources? This questions belongs to Ibu Melanie and Ibu.
Can you repeat that question?
What is one practical CRT strategy that educators can immediately implement in their classrooms, even with limited resources? Ma'am.
I think what Dr. Delita just mentioned,
Yeah.
For me, I agree completely with everything Dr. Delita says. It's unfortunate that Indonesia is only now coming to this point because it's been well researched before. I do want to point out that in the research also, native speaking teachers are not the ones who correct and reject. It's usually non-native speaking teachers.
Yeah.
So it has to do is exactly with what she said, teacher training, and she's speaking to the right audience. The young people that I did micro teaching with last semester, they just seemed inherently aware of this. So they have like different models for teaching, perhaps even than your generation, even though you're not that old. From your generation, these people 31, 32, I've heard these stories, what Dr. Delita was describing. But from younger people like 21, 22, it's different, perhaps because of WhatsApp and chatting and English as an international communication language for social media. So this change will occur with it will be a generational change as new teachers replace older teachers, right? I think, just learning a language should be fun. People should enjoy it. If you don't like being in the classroom, you're not going to learn anything and you're not going to like the language. And that's probably why a lot of Indonesians don't want to speak English, exactly what she described. So my best advice would be, why can't you just be a nice and friendly teacher in the classroom? Now, having said that, I think most Indonesians are nice and friendly people. So there's something else going on here. When you're teaching English to 8-year-old children who are probably already speak one language at home and maybe two if their parents have a mixed marriage or they live in another province. They've only started formally learning Bahasa Indonesian when they started school. So that's language number 2 or 3. And then you're supposed to teach them English 45 minutes a week to every class in the school. And you have 35 students in a class. The teachers can't even get them all sitting down and paying attention in 45 minutes. There are structural changes as structural problems as well, right? It's not just about, in Indonesia, I'm sure the very same trend as in the UAE, people send their kids to it's all over the world actually. People send their kids to private schools, smaller classrooms, more material, teachers are less worked and stressed out. It's incredibly challenging, and I only have respect for every single Indonesian teacher who enters, the K-12 system.
Thank you, Ibu Melanie. And thank you. I would love to say your very first beginning advice is very, very incredible, being a nice and friendly teacher. Thank you for that.
Don't
Well,
you agree, Delita? Do you
I
have anything to
agree.
add?
I
Yes,
agree.
Ibu
No,
Melanie. Yes, Ibu
yeah,
Melanie.
Ibu Delita, please.
It's nice to hear that you say that the younger generation of teachers today are being more like kind to the students. So start leaving out the old tradition of hyper focus on grammar and hyper correction. I think to answer what Bapak Patrick has questioned us is, as an educator, how do we implement this new awareness? I think by modeling directly to the students that every conversations, every opportunity to use English language is a negotiation. So you model to the students how to clarify, how to apologize, and they can pick up that disasters in every language situation is fixable. So by having that awareness, I think the hyper focus on how to become grammatically correct will be deleted from the student's mind. I think that's what I'm going to add, Bapak Patrick.
Wow, wow.
I
Thank you.
think Patrick has already he's seen me because we co-teach. So often, okay, I know Indonesians feel very insecure about their pronunciation, but honestly, sometimes I don't understand what they're saying. Now, I accept, there is Indonesian English. It's growing. It will become its own variety. But as a native speaker, that doesn't help me understand. It helps you understand as a bilingual speaker, but it doesn't help me. So my strategy is, and perhaps it's 50% each. I'm older now. My hearing is not what it used to be. I always tell the students, oh, I'm really sorry. I don't understand. I'm old now. I can't hear as well as I used to. Can you help me? So I'm modeling that kind of behavior all the time, naturally, as you would if you were a tourist in another country and you ask someone for directions. They wouldn't start correcting your grammar or your pronunciation. They would say, I'm sorry, I can't understand what, they'd be helpful and kind. This is, to try to get at meaning as you've just described, right?
Yeah. Thank you, Melanie. Thank you, Ibu Delita. Well, do we have some questions already? Oh yeah, I think we already have two questions. But the very first question is it possible to share today's material, Ibu Delita? That's the question from Getari. If it is possible, then maybe you could share the paper with us. Then we would love to send it to our distinguished participants today. Well, the second questions comes from Kakak Rapi, comes from Kakak Almatita Putih. The question is, can you please, Ibu Delita, can you please explain the difference between the CRT, culturally responsive teaching, and CRP, culturally responsive pedagogy approaches, which is more effective for students learning?
Okay. But do I answer directly?
Yeah, please.
Okay. Who's giving this question? I think it's Alprin Matita Putih. Okay, thank you for
Yeah.
the question, Alprin. I'll try to answer. I think the two terms are very closely related and often used interchangeably in the literature, but there is some meaningful distinction in how scholars frame them. I think the first one is associated with the teaching practice, the use of students' cultural knowledge. The culturally responsive teaching, it is related to the students' cultural knowledge, prior experiences, frame of reference, and also performance styles to make learning more relevant or effective. So how to encourage students to see themselves in the teaching. So the focus is on classroom level instructional strategy, how teachers select material, design tasks, communicate, build relationship, and assess learning in ways that validate and leverage students' cultural background. So it's actionable and practitioner oriented, so it's more useful for teachers. And the second term, the culturally responsive pedagogy, or CRP, it's like more broader or more theoretical terminology. So pedagogy here refers to not just methods, but the entire philosophy of teaching that may include some pillars like how to make it, how to move the students into academic success, the cultural competence, and also being aware of socio-political, critical things in the classroom. So CRP, or culturally responsive pedagogy, positions teaching as inherently political. So it asks teachers to help students recognize or understand and critique social inequalities. So those are the fundamental difference between culturally responsive teaching. So culturally responsive teaching sits in the more practical spectrum, but culturally responsive pedagogy is more philosophical. CRT answers, how do I teach in a way that connects with my students' cultures? But CRP, the culturally responsive pedagogy, is oriented toward what is the purpose of education in a culturally diverse situation like Indonesia, and how should that shape everything that a teacher does in a classroom. So pedagogy is the wider umbrella, and teaching is one expression of it in the classroom practice. I hope that answers your question, Alprin, Bapak Alprin Matita Putih. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ibu. Thank you so much, Ibu. Delita, that's very clear. I think the answers is perfect. Well, following that, we have another question from, hello. Oh, there is no name. Oh, from Mega Bintang. Mega Bintang. I have a questions. Mega Bintang from Pakuan University, Bogor. I have a questions. Would it be possible to conduct the research to analyze English textbooks using the CRT framework?
Who's gonna answer that? Is it me or Dr. Melanie?
Well, both maybe. I think it will be
Okay.
better if both can give the perceptions and aid.
Right. I think let's hear from Ibu Melanie first, because she has a lot of research on that already.
Well, all I would say about this is, there has already been a lot of research analyzing various English course books for cultural content. And the big publishers, do have different editions of their book. There's even an American edition of Headway. I mean, a lot of things have been happening in the publishing world since, the internet and PDFs and all of that. So a lot of material now is actually produced in-house by ministries of education that has acceptable cultural content. I've seen what the Ministry of Education in Indonesia has produced. So why would you want to analyze that? So, I mean, there's already been a big shift towards that. And I think if you analyzed locally produced textbook, you'd find they're okay. I think fewer and fewer education systems are buying imported course books that don't represent their culture, because now more and more people can produce things. I think the ELT publishing industry is also suffering very much. They are not producing new printed materials because no one's buying it anymore. AI is going to help us also produce or adapt our own lessons as much as we want. So for me, if I were doing my master's right now today, I did work on this back in 2001, 1999, 1998, before they started coming up with Middle Eastern editions of their books. Yeah. So I mean, you probably wouldn't find anything, earth-shaking or new. I think if I were doing my master's degree now, I would focus on current trends in English language teaching, like Dr. Delita's presentation. Global Indonesian. There's been very few Indonesian English. I was checking for studies on this myself for another presentation I'm doing tomorrow. There's only been a couple of studies on Indonesian English. Yeah. And one of them was a meta-analysis, I think 17. So this is new. It hasn't really been described and characterized. And they started doing this research about 10 years ago on Emirati English. Another topic, AI in education, how students are using AI, the impacts of AI on teaching academic writing. So in general, my opinion is that doing an analysis of core English textbooks, whether they're international or whether they're locally produced for culturally responsive teaching, would be like a bit outdated already. Delita, do you want to say anything about that?
Yeah,
I don't know when your doctorate is from, but it sounds pretty recent.
yeah, thank you, Ibu Melanie. I think I have something to add. Thank you for the question, Mega Bintang. Right. I think if you are really interested in analyzing textbook using the CRT framework, the widening concept of culture in the CRT itself can help you widen what you are going to explore. Like what just Ibu Melanie has said just now, the AI used in English text is actually a subsection that can be explored. So it's part of the subculture right now with our students working so much with AI. We can start looking at as a subculture. So that probably one of the area that is very underexplored because it's new and recent that you can still explore if you are really interested in doing English textbook analysis. I agree with Ibu Melanie. There are a lot of research on that already, but I think there's still some area that connects textbook analysis with how AI is integrated into the English teaching and learning that can still be open for exploration. Thank you.
But I mean, we definitely know and all accept that
Mm.
mainstream publishers
Yeah.
producing English language course books fall far short of the mark for any individual culture. But what's driving them is profits and being able to reach the most amount of markets possible
Right.
without a huge investment. I mean, they have progressed significantly, even mainstream language school course books used in Europe. Yeah.
Yeah, but with the era of technology right now, I think going indie can be another alternative. So we produce texts that can be self-published, but also with strict editing still, that we cannot we don't have to go to the big publisher who are working market oriented. So there is a little chance that we get published in that kind of publisher. I think that's I hope we answer Mega Bintang question.
Okay. Thank you, Bu Delita, and also Bu Melanie. Well, is there any more questions maybe from the participants? Oh, yeah, good. Very good questions for Ibu Helena. Well, Ibu Helena had, well, one of the faculty members of our study program. Anyway, now Ibu Helena is taking the doctoral program in Melbourne, yeah, if I'm not mistaken. Well, Ibu Delita, how are culturally responsive and culturally relevant pedagogies conceptualized? Oh, Monas, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry, Ma'am Elena. How's culturally responsive and culturally relevant pedagogies conceptualized and positioned within Indonesia's education policy, particularly in the context of English language teaching?
Right. Thank you very much for the question, Ibu Helena. I think this is a very big question. We have seen a lot of policies in Indonesian educational policies that support these culturally responsive and culturally relevant pedagogies already. But I think what is needed at most in the grassroots level is teachers who are able to implement it, adapting it to their classroom needs. So it's a legitimate, it has already a legitimate position within the Indonesian policy. What we don't see is how it is being implemented in the grassroots level in the classrooms that we are in every day. It's nice to hear Ibu Melanie said earlier that the younger generation of teachers has already had that shift in their teaching. They moved from the hyper correction culture into a more friendly way of teaching English. But I think that's not the case for every Indonesian context, because maybe some younger generation of teachers in big cities are already aware of this concept, but most in the not very big cities still need some training on how to make it applicable in their daily classroom. That's my answer, Ibu Helena.
Now, two things I want to say. And the first thing is for Mega Bintang, who asked about research topics, this would be a great one. How are CRT and CRP actually being positioned in the context? You could do class observations to get that. That would make a great research project for a master's student. And the second thing I want to say is I don't know you personally, Dr. Delita, but I may have traveled more extensively in Indonesia than you have because of my position with the Relo in Jakarta. So I've been to quite a few places, and currently I'm in Papua and Sarong, and we'll be doing teacher training and meeting teachers and BEd students in the next couple of days. So I think it's more widespread than you think outside of Java. I've been to Malang, Solo, Bandung, and Jakarta for teacher training, but I've also been to East and West Kalimantan, North Sulawesi as well. Probably some places I'm missing. And certainly Maluku, and now I'm in Sarong. I think the real I think the problem is not the provincial capitals, but probably the more remote islands who sometimes don't even have an English teacher.
So it's good to hear the news that it's not like very Java-centric.
Not only
only.
Java, yes, that's the point I want to make. It's not only in
That's the
Java.
good news. That's the good news. I'm glad to hear that.
Well, thank you, Melanie, and your views on these discussions. And I think we are running out of time now. We'll delete that and Ibu Melanie. Well, however, ladies and gentlemen, we are coming to the end of today's international webinar sessions. I would love to ask you to give one more time a very round applause for our incredible speakers today. Ibu Delita and Ibu Melanie, please. Wow, 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 incredible. But as what we always do in Indonesia, don't forget, this is one of the most important thing in every webinar or any event. Would you love to please, all of the participants, please turn on your camera. Please turn on your camera. We are going to take a picture.
Fine.
Please turn on your camera, please. Huh? Excuse me? Okay. I would love to change it into gallery views. I'm expecting everyone. I didn't say only few or some, but everyone. Well, from 74 participants, only 10 maybe that are turning on their camera. Please, everyone, please, please, please. Okay. Okay, then I'm going to take at least 3 times for these photo sessions. Please give your best post ever. In 3, 2, 1. Yeah, 1. Hold on. In 3, 2, 1. Yeah. One more time. 3, 2, 1. And the last, please. Once more. In 3, 2, 1. Thank you so much, everyone, and for both speakers of today's session, today's international webinar. We would love to ask your kindness. Maybe after this, you can share the materials with the participants, because your materials today, we would love to say that's incredible and is very inspiring for us and very insightful. So thank you so much for today's sessions. Thank you very much for our distinguished speakers, both Ibu Melanie and also Ibu Delita, for generously sharing your knowledge, experiences, and insights with us today. And thank you also to Professor Carol, who already opened today's international webinar, and to our organizing partners, both English Education Study Programs and also American Corner Ambon, and all participants who join us from different places and contributed to these conversations. And shout out loud also to the RELO Regional English Language Office, United States Embassy in Jakarta. We hope today's webinar inspires us all to continue designing learning spaces that are inclusive, in case of culturally meaningful and responsive to the diverse learners that we serve recently. I'm Patrick, and it's been my honor to moderate today's international webinar. Thank you very much.
Perfect.
Stay inspired and have a
Perfect.
wonderful
Sorry,
day. I'm
perfect.
so sorry.
Okay.
So sorry.
Yeah. Maybe Pak Carol, as the president, want to say something, Pak? I will also say something, of course.
Okay.
Maybe after
Well,
you.
it was very, yeah, thank you, Ibu Ocha. Yeah, just want to thank Ibu Melanie and Ibu Delita for the wonderful material sharing with us all. It is our hope that this is not the final or the last webinar, but we look forward for future webinars. I think so. We can share more experience in teaching English. Not only for today. I think that's all. From me. Thank you so much.
Ya, Mem Ocha.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Pak Carol.
Yeah.
Ibu Ocha.
Thank you, Prof. Carol, as the President of FKIP Universitas Patimura. And now I want to say also thank you to the speakers, Ibu Melanie and also Ibu Delita. Thank you so much for sharing your ideas about effective strategy in teaching English based on your experience in teaching students in university. And in this opportunity, I would like to give you appreciation, a certificate that we prepare for the board speaker. Okay, this is for Ibu Melanie Gobert. This is the soft copy of the certificate. The hard one or the original one will be directly to Ibu Melanie, and also the next for Ibu Delita. Wait a moment. Okay, and this is the certificate for Ibu Delita.
Thank you very much, Ibu Ocha. Thank you.
You're welcome, Ibu. We will share it for you for the original, because we have to meet with the dean because of he is busy now. So we are going to send you the original one. Thank you so much,
Welcome to Ambon to pick it up. I think.
Okay, that's better. Thank you, Ibu Delita. And as Prof. Carol mentioned that maybe in another time we are going to meet again to have another issue to share, another webinar. Also with Ibu Melanie, we know that Ibu Melanie have the last semester for with us in English department. So we hope that Ibu Melanie in the future is going to have the same event with us also. Thank you, Ibu Melanie. Thank you, Ibu Delita, Papet, Prof. Carol, and all lecturers and students and participants. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Ibu Delita. Thank you, Ibu Melanie.
Thank you, Ibu Delita. Thank you, Ibu Melanie.
Terima kasih Pak Carol untuk kehadirannya, Pak. Thank you so much, Pak.
Sama-sama.
Peserta yang belum isi absensi, tolong diisi ya absensinya, participants.
Partisipan absensi ini nanti akan dipakai untuk sertifikatnya ya partisipan. Jadi mohon partisipan dapat melengkapi absennya. Terima kasih.
Izin pamit Bapak Ibu.
Iya,
Terima kasih banyak Bu Delita.
Thank you, Bu Delita.
Thank you, Bu Del. Sampai jumpa lagi, Bu Del.
Thank you, Ibu Melita. Delita, Ibu Melanie, thank you so much.
Bu Melanie, thank you so much.
Safe ya.
Iya,
Ya,
Pak
Prof.
Carol.
Thank you, Papet.
Mem, siap Mem, izin beta kabur, Mem.
Papet,
Ya,
Papet,
siap.
katong punya Papet, jangan lupa
Semua
sertifikat Papet.
alumni, mahasiswa,
Mem,
thank you.
sertifikat.
Mem
Gitu cuma kesini aja, Mem.
Mem Popi.
Iya,
Iya,
Mem.
Mem Ocha. Siapa yang bikin Papet?
Erik, Mem, Erik.
Pak
Oh,
Erik,
ya.
Mem.
Oke, Mem Ocha.
Ya,
Danke,
siap.
bye-bye.
Oke,
Pak Petri.
dah.
Mem Ocha.